What's up? Welcome back to the Inside The Rink Podcast. Tonight we're going to be discussing Cole Eiserman signing his ELC. Leon Draisaitl's done for the year. Connor McDavid calls out the Pacific Division race, playoff chatter, and so much more. But tonight it's an honor to be joined by a Midwest stallion. Producer Connor will be co-hosting with me tonight.
Sheesh, a Midwest stallion and an honor. I mean, just because I, am technically the boss doesn't mean that much. But I guess, hey, guess what? Good news. We're not in the same spot, so I can give you a little bit of a weather update. It was amazing this weekend. 70s and 80s the entire time. It was patio season. It was great. Friday night, I actually went out to a birthday party for one of my friends, and we all had some grilled barbecue and sat out on a patio, bounced around on a trampoline, and everybody got sloshed up. And lo and behold, it's the Midwest. It's back to 40 degrees today, baby. So here we go. We're back
I
at
am
it.
so jealous. It's been cold. Finally, though, I said it this past weekend walking out to my car, I can finally walk and get to my grill. So while you are outside enjoying a barbecue, I can finally get to mine. Now the question will it be warm enough anytime soon to actually use it? That remains to be seen. We'll see how things go. But we got college hockey season coming to an end, and players
That's all I've been seeing on Twitter, baby.
Everybody's starting to sign those ELCs. A big one this past week was Cole Eiserman is signed his 3-year ELC with the New York Islanders. They had him sent to Bridgeport for the remainder of the season. He's played in 2 games down in Bridgeport so far. They're in a crucial stretch of a playoff race, just like the Islanders are, and did not record a point yet. He was a -1. This is a kid, 32 games this year at BU, had 28 points on 18 goals and 10 assists. And honestly, I think it's a great, nice piece for the Islanders moving forward in the future. And obviously the conversation, having him down in the AHL, getting his feet wet and, getting ready, even whether he was up in the NHL or the AHL, both teams in a playoff race. So getting to experience that also is huge for the organization.
Yeah, getting to experience that is huge. For Eiserman, this year, I did some research, obviously, today, having to be on the show and look through the notes. And Eiserman seems like he's had a bit of a down year in his college season, and coming into the ELC, the Islanders look at him as almost an untouchable, but not quite. There's obviously trade talks this year that he was involved in, but he never got involved because Matthew Darsh really likes him as a player. It'll be interesting to see what he turns out to be. Going to the AHL first seems to be like a cop-out for a lot of teams these days. Not many of these prospects are signing and immediately coming and making an NHL impact. Obviously, you have your one-offs like Matthew Schaefer and things of that nature, but other than that, it's pretty few and far between. Like right now, Boston Bruins have James Higgins, that there's a whole lot of hubbub going about who's, in an opposite direction of signing an ELC. So I don't know. I guess we'll see with Cole Eiserman if he becomes an impact player or not for the New York Islanders. As far as the Bridgeport Islanders go, you can only hope that they have, a decent run in them in their last year before packing up their bags. So maybe he'll give them something good to send off.
Yeah, they made a jump over the weekend going from 7th to 5th. And you actually mentioned Higgins there, and that's another one. It's just an interesting situation. I mean, Eiserman obviously seemed like he had no issue going to Bridgeport. I don't know what the situation, from what I've seen today. Elliot Friedman said it with Higgins. It was a big day. Obviously, no which way it's going right now. There's been no news on if he's signing his ELC or what he's doing. But Higgins is another player that I want to see really badly, even if it's in Providence, because they're first place in the Atlantic Division down there. And you see all these kids coming over, and you're going to see a lot more in the next 2-3 weeks. I mean, first round of play of the NCAA tournament is this weekend, Thursday and Friday. And if you're in the New England area, I know there's a big Michigan State game this weekend against UConn, and they're not just playing basketball in the Sweet 16. They're also playing I guess you could say the Sweet 16 for college hockey, because 16 teams make it
Yeah.
and they're playing in the first round. So big weekend rivalry there. An interesting story that came out over the last week, and I think that we're gonna hammer home this team tonight a lot. First off,
Most
it's
likely.
Leon Draisaitl. He is done for the regular season. Did not rule out a return if they were to make the playoffs, and he's got a lower body injury, a huge loss for the Oilers. And obviously, the news comes out and they win that night, and they're still holding on to that third spot in the Pacific Division. They're an interesting team. I really want to bash this team, and I'm going to save that for our next topic. But
Fair
this
enough.
is a tough loss for the Oilers.
Yeah, it's a tough loss. And when you've seen McDavid or Draisaitl go down previously, the other one has picked up the slack. Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin traditionally have done the same thing. When those two superstars are together for so long, they have an extra gear that they kick it up in when the other one's not there. As far as the being out for the rest of the year, I haven't really seen any kind of injury video or anything like that. I didn't really follow up on it too much. Sources said he kind of, tweaked something in a pillow fight in one of their games recently, but can't confirm nor deny.
I thought the same thing too, and I didn't see any video. No idea where the injury came in, but the Oilers lose Draisaitl, and you mentioned their other superstar, and he had some interesting things to say as Connor McDavid calls out the Pacific Division race and calls it a pillow fight. And I mean, you put this note in, and I was going to do more research before you would put it in, and it just caught my eye right away. The top team in that division is the Anaheim Ducks, a team that we have talked about countless times on this podcast. As a young team, like seeing them at the top of the division, but overall they're 13th in the league. And I look at the comments McDavid made, and I think me and Aaron had talked about it at least last week, if not the week before that, especially going into the trade deadline episode as well. That they made the comment of not wanting a goalie, or they were content with the goalie situation they had. And if they don't make a deep run this year, and McDavid signed an extension, but it's only for a couple of years, could he be leaving? And him making these comments where they're at right now, not having Draisaitl the rest of this year, the other young teams that are hard charging in that division, and the Kings. Well, I shouldn't say the young teams in the Kings, but like a team that's been there before the Kings, the young Sharks, the Kraken making their move, the Ducks leading the division. It kind of signals to me that this is just a way of saying, let me finish out my extension and I'm leaving. I don't want to be a part of this anymore. I want to play competitive hockey in the regular season in the middle of March, reaching that playoff point in the season.
Yeah, I mean, it sounded like a whole lot of frustration, and I don't know if you're going to be able to hear it or not, but it sounds like a helicopter is coming to the hospital that I live next to, so may or may not hear that. For me, this whole McDavid pillow fight comment really makes me think that his frustration levels he's finally hit it. Like, he's there now. Mm-hmm. They made a goaltender change. It didn't work out. It wasn't the right move. They made some trades at the trade deadline that were, flaccid at best. Like, you are still going to need to give me a blue pill to get me excited about that roster. And that's not fair when you have players that are of their caliber, being Draisaitl and McDavid. And I think at some point you have to figure this out, or Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl or both are going to force your hand, just being frustrated with what's going on. And, kind of getting down a tangent and aside here, if you're going to be the Edmonton Oilers and really bungle it up, why not trade one of those superstar players to try and fix some of the wrongs that you've made?
You can get a couple pieces. Certainly get a couple pieces.
You could probably get more than a couple pieces. Like, for example, right? Let's look at the Quinn Hughes trade. You got Marco Rossi. You got Buyam, a first-round pick, and I believe it was Liam Ogren in that trade.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're getting plus on that.
Yes.
In forms of quality. I think like you're getting a team's probably 2 top 6 players, maybe a top D, a top goalie prospect, a couple first round picks. Like, you're doing serious work unless, you're attaching Leon Draisaitl and Darnell Nurse to get rid of his contract. I mean, you're probably getting some significant feedback.
I also wonder though, saying that, say like it is, for instance, Draisaitl and McDavid has that 2-year extension, whatever. Seeing Draisaitl move, say in the offseason, does that piss McDavid off more? And it's just he is done, and you may not get anything back for him at that point. Like, 'cause I think you gotta be strategic on which one you move and how you move them. Yeah, I mean, if you move McDavid, you could potentially still find a way to lock up Draisaitl. Whereas vice versa, you're kind of saying to McDavid, "Hey, we're going to get these pieces. We're going to have 2 years, and we got two players that could come close to equaling Draisaitl, but we got better at the same time. Like, we got multiple pieces in our lineup that we're going to try to get this thing done." First thing right off the top of my head is I think they got to go get a goalie prospect. We said it right there with, they tried to upgrade in goal, didn't work. And there's been a name that I've seen thrown out so many times, and that's like with the Red Wings, and that's Sebastian Cossa. It's a young goalie piece that they have wanted since the draft, and it didn't work out. They didn't get him. He went to Detroit, and they've asked, from what it sounds like, multiple times. And could that be a piece with somebody else that starts a conversation? Maybe. I don't think
I
so.
don't know,
but
because, like, here's the predicament they're in, right? Like, they keep selling assets to make a run at it and go for it, and they're emptying the cupboard for, all purposes. They don't have a lot of picks. They don't have a lot of prospects, and the people that they want to trade off their roster are going to immediately make them worse in any trade. Most likely. You've got to take a step back to take a step forward now for them. And I think that's kind of where the rubber meets the road. Like, are you going to take, as Steve Yzerman in Detroit, are you going to take scraps for Sebastian Cossa? Probably not, unless something doesn't work out, or, he gets blocked in the pipeline, or the player's pissed about his playing time. Like, that's just not going to happen. There's not going to be another GM out there who's going to, save you. You've got to be looking for, a team that has a really thick goalie pipeline. Like, this is going to be an example. I don't know how great it's going to be. The Boston Bruins have Swayman and Korpisalo in the NHL. There's absolutely no movement there for their goaltending. They have Luke Kavalin, who was the ECHL champion last year, who's playing for ECHL Maine now this year. And then they have Zajatek and DiPietro in the AHL. And both of them are probably NHL worthy backups. Maybe they could be more than that. What are those two doing? I believe they both need contracts at the end of the year. Look for players like that. Calgary did it with Dustin Wolf previously. They went and got a backup goaltender or an AHL goaltender with a lot of promise. You roll the dice on, you take a chance. Most times, that's probably going to roll decently for you if you have good defensive structure on your team.
Well, that's why I mentioned Cossa, was because the Red Wings do have Trey Augustine coming from Michigan State, most likely after the NCAA tournament ends. And, Talbot is a free agent. So Cosa's lined up to be the backup in Detroit next year behind Gibson, if not the 1A, 1B situation. And Edmonton wanting him, I mean, that could be something where you start with him and maybe your next top prospect, and you could potentially have an offer with a couple first-round picks to go maybe have a conversation about McDavid or Draisaitl.
Maybe Sergei Bobrovsky comes knocking in the offseason. You never know.
Absolutely. And you mentioned DiPietro. It's a perfect fit. I had heard somebody talk about, look what Brandon Bussey's doing in Carolina, and DiPietro could get his shot next year to be that guy. Bussey had to get passed down a couple times to get there, but here we are. And one other thing before we get off this whole topic is the Pacific Division. I mean,
we should actually talk about the Pacific Division instead of just the Oilers, I guess.
We'll save time for them. We came into the season and I was all in on Vegas. I mean, you look at this team on paper and they looked like they were the class of the Western Conference, like just so much talent. They go out and get, somebody Carter Hart, whether how you feel about his character, whatever. The player himself was a pretty decent goalie. and they went out, added him, and you thought, okay, Aiden Hill and Carter Hart as a duo makes this team better. I mean, you're not playing Carter Hart, 50 games every night. You're going to play him closer to 35, 40. Now he's injured, but it made the Vegas Golden Knights a better team when they were already one of the best on paper. And all of a sudden now they're in second place. They've given up the lead to the Ducks, who are a younger team. And, I look at this division from top to bottom, and the team that's in first place, to me, has the best goalie in this division in Lucas Dostal and the Ducks.
Mm-hmm.
That's my personal gut feeling. And I look at that and I go, you're seeing the young kids perform. They have a great goalie behind them. The Ducks could be a scary team come playoff time. But after that, I mean, they went through their hiccup throughout the season, and that's why they're, I think, 13th in the league, is that little stretch they had. But the veterans got them out of it. The young kids are going to get experience in the playoffs because they're going to make the playoffs.
They're probably going to have a rough go in the playoffs. So let's be honest. It's going to be a rough experience for a young and upcoming team.
But they also have the veteran guys to help out in that situation. And Dostal's going to get his licks.
But the veteran players aren't going to be the deciding factors in these games. And that's where I get tripped up with teams adding, veteran talent and experience to their roster. It only matters to an extent. Like it's got to be somebody who's going to play a role on your team. It can't be somebody who plays 10 minutes a night and then see you later. Like that's just not how it goes. So, I mean, I think that the Ducks are going to be the next class of the division. Like right now, overall, I think in the NHL right now in this 2 to 3 year span we're in, we are seeing a turnover of the NHL. The good teams that have been good for the last decade, a decade and a half, are now becoming piss poor teams. And all the teams that were in the dumpsters have finally figured their shit out and are coming out of it, and they're just completely flopping. It's almost across the board in every division for the most part. In the Pacific, mostly, I think I completely disagree with you on the Vegas point of view. I think Vegas isn't as good as everybody makes them out to be. I think they're very quickly getting worse. Because of age. They went and tried to acquire a lot of stars or superstars that were on the back nine of their careers. Obviously it's already happened with Pietrangelo. Mark Stone is probably there. Their goaltending is probably even getting there, I would have to say, even though they're not quite old. They have some star players. They've wasted all of their draft capital in their prospects to try and make it happen. This year with the Shea Theodore for Rasmus Anderson, or not Shea Theodore, who was the person that they traded?
White Cloud.
There you go. Zach Whitecloud for Rasmus Anderson swap. I don't think that worked out in their favor. And it's not even a for sure thing that the guy resigns. If Rasmus Anderson doesn't resign, I think that's a fucking disaster. So I think they're slipping in the opposite direction. The Kings trying like hell to get Anze Kopitar into the playoffs. I think they're going in the wrong direction. The Seattle Kraken have just sucked since they've been created. They did a horrible job of putting that team together, unfortunately.
They're fool's gold right now. I mean, that's the reason why they're hanging around.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Pacific Division is going to end up being, can the Sharks still figure it out as a young team? And will the Edmonton Oilers hang on until they get it back together? I don't think that Anaheim they're probably what you could call a paper tiger. They're probably going to fold when they face some good adversity in the first or the second round against a really good team.
Well, that's why I said with what I said about Anaheim was I look at that first round matchup and I mentioned the veteran stuff, and they're playing right now. They're going to play Utah, a team that hasn't really young players that have not really been in the playoffs. So that's why I mean, like, are they making a deep run? No, I think they're a first round a series win, and then they're going to run into Vegas or Edmonton, and depending upon where they're at, like if Edmonton doesn't have Draisaitl, I think the Ducks could take care of that. Vegas, like you said, I mean, on paper going into the year is why I thought they were so dominant, but now watching them play, I agree with you. They're getting older. And that's why they are where they're at. They're second. And if the Sharks could figure out, they certainly could make a run up to that second spot. But
Mm-hmm.
I get no matter what. I mean, how that would be so much fun. A Ducks Sharks second round playoff series would be fantastic, especially because. And I wrote this article earlier in the season, but like you see, not just the teams, but the youth coming in. Celebrini was making a name already, but then everybody saw him on the world stage in the Olympics and
Yep.
made an even more name for himself.
Huge for the NHL to see a player like that in the Olympics.
And now you can't really even buy his jersey anymore. I got lucky to, get my son one for Christmas. But Leo Carlson, another young piece who did not have, an Olympic name to make, and now put him in the playoffs, and he can make that name for himself, especially in a series, say against Celebrini.
Yeah.
And that's where I think that luck would run out with the Ducks. Like I think they could very well get to a second round matchup. Could even potentially, depending on who it's against, move on. But I think no matter what you face up against one of those central teams, you're in trouble.
Let's have a quick aside. Let's have some fun. Let's mix it up a little bit. This isn't on the agenda at all, so you're gonna have to freewheel this with some guts here. Just whatever you feel. You have Macklin Celebrini on the Sharks, who they're having a successful season. They're playing meaningful hockey right now. He just went to the Olympics. He went through that experience. Even though they got the silver medal, he had phenomenal performance. You have the Chicago Blackhawks, Connor Bedard, still on a struggling team, snubbed from the Olympic team, really seemed to be rolling the tires around in Chicago. Who do you think 5 years from now and at the end of their careers is going to be the better player between the two, Celebrini and
Celebrini? Celebrini.
You think so too?
And I think that has a lot to do with the chemistry he has with somebody like Will Smith, and having a veteran player that's been to the playoffs and Tyler Toffoli, not a superstar player, but and then Celebrini having that chance. Now Bedard can have it in 4 years, but Celebrini having that chance of going to the Olympics, playing with somebody like McDavid and somebody playing with somebody like McKinnon. At the end of the day, I think Celebrini is built for a better career. And I also like overall the Sharks, what they have for pieces that I think, not just stats wise, but also the awards wise, like, Stanley Cups or even conference championships, things like that. I think the Sharks, like Celebrini, was going to be better than Bedard in that aspect. Now, I think where the Blackhawks are right now and what they could potentially get in the draft this year, depending upon how the lottery goes, could also benefit Bedard. That it could because if we have this conversation 100%. 3 years from now, that answer could very well change to Bedard. But as of right now, at this moment, it is hands down, no question, Macklin Celebrini.
This is the way that I think about it. I think Macklin Celebrini is the piece where Connor Bedard is a piece.
Yes.
And they aren't really equal when you think of them that way. I think of it in a similar fashion of Austin Matthews is probably a piece. He's not the piece. I think David Pastrnak is a piece. He's not the piece. And when you have players that aren't the piece, you have to have a lot of them on your roster for that to kind of equal out. Like I think Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are both the piece, which is why I think they don't work together on a team. They're both top dogs, and you can't really give them the same amount of line time and puck possession time on a team together. So I think it'll be interesting. I think Chicago does have Frank Nazar there, who has a good chance to build some chemistry with Bedard and really make things work. But it'll be interesting to see. Like I said, the NHL is changing over the guard into the next era of superstars here.
I see the similarities with the two of their teams where you just mentioned it too. Like Bedard has Nazar and somebody like Tyler Bertuzzi. And I look at Celebrini, I said it, he has Will Smith and Tyler Toffoli. The similarities are there, and I think Spencer Knight for Chicago is a very good goalie. Just like I think Askarov is going to be has the potential, if he can reach it, to be the best goalie in the Pacific Division.
Correct.
to me, and this is the thought that popped in, I had to look it up for a second. So to me, Celebrini is somebody that can win, a Rocket Richard Trophy and Art Ross, whereas Bedard to me is somebody that's going to compete against Celebrini for the Art Ross Trophy, not the Richard Trophy. And that's just the way their games are and the way watching each guy play. That's how I see their future panning out. You know, like you said, Bedard is a playmaker. If he plays with those guys, he's going to get his point total up there. Celebrini is a guy who will battle against you on the boards, take the puck from you, and go put it in the back of the net.
Yeah, I think the one thing that's going to hold Celebrini back, and I had to look it up because I was like, is he ever going to be a Selke conversation? Fuck no. He has 96 points and he's only +3. That's awful. That is bad. You've got to work on that no matter how poor of a defensive team you are. That's abysmal.
Yeah, I think we could talk about that. That's another thing in a couple years that I think we could see his game change into that aspect, that he could be in that conversation. But right now, no, I don't think so either. But that was a good one and made me really think, but at the same time didn't, because I had the answer right the whole time in the back of my head, because I've been on Macklin Celebrini for the longest time. I mean, even watching him at BU, it's just I just always liked Macklin Celebrini's game. And like I said, learning from or playing with, McKinnon and McDavid in the Olympics, and probably going to do it again in the World Cup of Hockey. And granted, Bedard will be there too, but he has a leg up in having done it already and played with both of those guys, that I think that will benefit his career in the long run and give him the edge. But a team in Connor Bedard's division, in the Dallas Stars, they're on a little bit of a stretch here. And I would say, I put in the notes going into yesterday that they had points in, I think it was 17 of their last 18. They lost last night, so that's to 17 of their last 19. But as I was getting my notes ready for tonight too, I looked and I realized they've lost 3 of their last 4. Granted, they have points in 2 of those 4. As of recording tonight, they sit 3 points back of the Colorado Avalanche for first place in the Central Division, which I had brought up a couple weeks ago when Conrad was here and said, can Dallas catch Colorado? And I think at the time we both kind of sat there and said no. Now they're 3 points back and they're coming away with points. You still say no?
Nope. Colorado still has a game in hand and they're 3 points ahead.
I have a feeling.
I don't see it happening. They're stumbling in. They've got some injuries. Rantanen's just about to come back. Is that going to be enough juice? I don't know. I mean, probably not. He's probably not going to be pushing it too hard, just trying to get comfortable before the playoffs. I don't know how much it matters to them. If you're first in the division, right, you're probably going to play Nashville, Los Angeles, or
San Jose.
Maybe Seattle if they really pick it up. Maybe San Jose. One of those 4 teams, whoever makes it in a wild card 2, you're going to play them if you get first in the Central. So does that mean a lot? Yeah, I guess it does. That's basically a bye if you're considering that you're going to have to play the Minnesota Wild.
It was kind of like what we said last year, though. Winnipeg went into that series with the Blues and things went the way they did. They won 7 games. But when you looked at it on paper, you kind of sat there and said, okay, Winnipeg kind of has a bye. And they're going to let Colorado and Dallas fight it out for 7 games. And they're going to get, a well-rested, or they're going to be well-rested because you thought they were going to win in 4 or 5 games. And you figured Dallas and Colorado were going to battle out for 7. And then they didn't. And, it ended up going the way it did. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong off the top of my head, I'm drawing a blank, but Winnipeg did lose to Dallas, I believe, in the second round.
I have no clue. I do not remember that.
I feel like it was Dallas and Edmonton for the Western Conference Finals last year. For some reason, that's just sticking in my head.
We'll just say you're right, and we'll pretend. Somebody will correct us.
And to me, it's not guaranteed you're moving on, but it is an easier matchup than facing Minnesota. to me, the conversation, and this is the way I see it in my head, just envisioning how this is going to go. There's 3 weeks left to the regular season. These two teams play, I believe it's next Saturday. It is, they have one more matchup at least coming up. I could see it where one of those teams is leading the division by 1 point, and that game that Saturday will have a playoff atmosphere, and the winner of that game will take the division lead, and they're just going to run, and that's going to be who wins the division. And that's just going to be the end all be all right there, is whoever wins that game is winning the division.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the only race right now that really actually means anything to those teams. Because it actually does feel like a bye week when you don't have to play one of the toughest teams in the playoffs. Like, those three teams are the best teams in the playoffs this year. Full stop.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody out of the East scares me. Nobody out of the Central, or nobody out of the Pacific scares me at all.
There's one East team that scares me. That's it.
No, compared to those three teams, none of those three teams are scared about anybody coming out of the East. I promise you that.
No, I don't. Yeah, I think the West. It's kind of like people talked about with football in the Super Bowl. Like everybody felt like the championship was the NFC title game, and I think people will feel the same way if it's. I mean, obviously it can't be that way, but if the second round of that part of the bracket will be, people will feel like that's the Stanley Cup championship right there. Like it's. I mean, another team that we mentioned them, and they're young, but Utah's kind of another one that I'm interested in if they can make a deep run. I mean, they got the goalie, they got the young pieces, they got, the stars. Like we saw Logan Cooley take a jump forward this year and even last year, but the injury kind of hurt him a little bit this season. But Clayton Keller's been playing well. They got some pieces that I think they could be a team to watch out for in the Western Conference Finals. And kind of like I just said, we talked about the Jets last year. Right.
They're going to go. They're going to go through.
But
the
we
Pacific.
talk about, and they should take care of business there, except for maybe the Ducks as the only team that really, to me. I mean, the Oilers do have the talent to do it, but is Draisaitl there? There is question marks. How are the goalies going to show up? And we talked about this, in the prediction episode with the Panthers and the legs. We see they're not making potentially not making the playoffs. Who knows? With 3 weeks left, but the Panthers run probably is coming to an end, and the Oilers legs catch up to them, and they don't get that far. And the Ducks and Mammoth meet up in that second round, and Utah takes advantage, and then they could very well battle it out against one of those three teams because they're gonna fight and claw their way in probably a 7-game series in the second round to get there. And whoever they face could sit there and go, like we just said with Winnipeg and St. Louis last year, I'm just good. Winnipeg's going to get there, and they're going to wait for the teams that claw and fight to move on, and they're going to take care of that. So Utah's an interesting team to me, that if they can get there, they could be a scary team to watch. I'm not fully sold on the Eastern Conference. I think Carolina is the class of the Eastern Conference, and would be very shocked to see them not reach at least the Eastern Conference Finals. But I think they're going to be the representative in the Eastern Conference. Tampa does have a conversation, but they've kind of fallen off as of late when Buffalo's taking control of that division. Buffalo's the same as the Ducks as far as I'm concerned, but we'll touch on the Eastern Conference in a little bit here. Another team in the Dallas Stars division is the Nashville Predators, who currently hold that final wildcard spot. They're on a 4-game win streak. They have points in 6 of their last 7. Right now, the Kings are 2 points back, the Kraken are 4 points back, and the Sharks are 5 points back. Interesting, the Predators decided to not sell off the big name pieces. Like, we thrown out Ryan O'Reilly, Steven Stamkos, all those names. Marchessault was out there for a little bit. Ended up holding on to them. Trotz is stepping down after this year. They do, however, though, as I was looking into this, have a gauntlet coming up to end the season. And it's all teams that are, aside from maybe one or two that are fighting for a playoff spot or in a playoff spot. They got to face the Sharks 3 times, the Ducks twice, the Kings twice. They got the Devils and the Canadiens. They got the Lightning Utah, and Minnesota to end their season.
Jesus fucking Christ. They got to have the worst schedule to end the season.
Literally, like it's gonna, if you make the playoffs, like you played a playoff schedule to get there, so you deserve it at that point.
I know for sure that the Boston Bruins had the second toughest, but I am assuming that this is the worst.
Has to be. Has to be. And if I'm San Jose, I'm sitting there going, if I can sweep Nashville to end the year, they could very well make the playoffs. Because that's 6 points right there, and you're sitting 5 points back. And obviously, I'm sure there's got to be at least one more Kings and Kraken game in there for the Sharks because division rivals. I can't imagine that slate is wrapped up yet. But again, I mean, LA twice too, and Utah, all playoff teams that you're kind of chasing in Nashville. So, I mean,
Yeah.
Nashville, what's that? I think it's 12 games left, I think is what I saw. If you come away with, I don't even know, like, would you say the threshold? There's that 15 points, you make the playoffs out of 24?
I think what you're convincing me of is it's too early to tell.
Yep. And it's kind of what we said last week. Nobody wants that playoff spot. It's the Kings got a little stretch going where they were hot and they dropped off
why
again.
would you? Like, as a team, obviously the players are going to try. But for the organization, why would you? Why would you set yourself up to play Colorado instead of just coasting the rest of the year and take the better draft pick? Like, you're not missing out. The players don't get paid in the postseason. So, like, if they don't feel like they're seriously going to go play for a Stanley Cup, how many of these players do you think actually want to make the playoffs if they know they're not a serious contender? An honest question that I don't know that we're ever going to get a true answer to. But maybe that's a little bit of what you're seeing. Like, if I was a player, right, that's how I would feel. Like, I wouldn't want to be sacrificing part of my off season to go on this fake playoff run to just sell some tickets for the ownership. Like, what does that matter? Like, I would rather save time and effort for when this team is a serious contender.
I'd be curious, and I was just going to start to pull it up, but I don't know if I'll have time to. If any of these teams in San Jose, Seattle, LA, Nashville, any of them have beaten, we'll say Colorado, multiple times this season, could that change their aspect of we can beat the Avalanche and we'll get there and we can take care of it? I know, again, playoff hockey is a whole different thing. Colorado's been there. They have the experience. They've won a cup, majority of the roster that's there. But, is there, like, say if the Sharks beat them twice, it's, can we get there, maybe even move on to a second round face off against, a Dallas or Minnesota, have that tough run, but we get that experience at the same time too. Because again, Celebrini's never been there. So like the Kings wanted to get there. I get it for Kopitar, but do we really think the Kings can make a deep run? No. Nashville, not going to make a deep run. But somebody like the Sharks are a team that very well could benefit from, getting there if they've beaten Colorado or even Dallas multiple times this year. Like, I know San Jose has struggled against Edmonton this year, definitely Vegas, but if you get a team, you can get that spot and you can get lucky and get Colorado and you've handled them, absolutely. I mean, that would be the only thing that I disagree with you on there is there's a little bit of energy to get that spot. But if you don't, if you've lost every game against them and it hasn't been close, say it's been 7-1 every game or 5-1 every game, like, why am I gonna put my blood, sweat, and tears into getting there? And
San Jose beat Colorado in overtime once, and Nashville beat them in regulation 7-3 once.
yeah, I knew Nashville had one win, but I didn't know if they had multiple.
Those
Nashville
were the
isn't
only two
interesting.
in that group.
Nashville is a team I had in making the playoffs this year too. And
Nashville is that old gritty team that has the talent in the goaltending to be a pain in your posterior in the playoffs, but I don't think that they have the juice to get them across the finish line. Like, I don't think their youth in their lineup has enough oomph to get them all the way through.
that building, though, if they're playing at home, that building could give you them the oomph. I love
That doesn't really matter in my opinion. I think that's more played up than like I think the home ice advantage is more played up than people give it credit for.
and at that aspect too. It's only 3 games. Like you got to win 4, so it can play in, but you got to go on the road 4 times and win 1 game against Colorado or Dallas 1 time on the road. But Nashville, to me, mentioning them and the way you kind of just said that, like triggered something for me. And they don't have the superstar, but they're kind of in a way the opposite of Edmonton. They have the goaltender, they have the grit, they have,
It's the guy and the A guy. They don't have any the guy. They have a lot
right,
of a guy. They have Stamkos, they have Ryan O'Reilly, they have Saros, they have Forsberg, they have Yossi. Like they will kill you with names. I could keep going down their
Shea.
list.
So, like,
Yeah, exactly. However, none of those guys are in their primes.
right.
They're all older fellows. Like half of them are my age. Like, fuck, like that doesn't sound great. Like, that's why I'm not 100% sure. Could they be like the St. Louis Blues in 2019, where they go on a hell of a run, being that 8 seed? Yeah, they absolutely could. UC Saros is no shit for a goaltender. And they have some really good stars who have been there and they have done that on different teams with different rosters. They could figure it out when the game slows down a little bit in the postseason. But again, you're going to run into Colorado or Dallas or Minnesota, and good night.
One thing, I didn't put this on the notes, so I guess I'm going to turn the tables on you. And is there one team I didn't mention on that list? And you said 2019 St. Louis Blues run. The Winnipeg Jets are hard charging. Do you think with what they have, Connor Hellebuck and the way he played in the Olympics, I know he played awful against the Bruins the other night, but do you think with what they have, they could be a team that could pull some upsets and make a deep run if they were able to get in? I think they're at 60 points right now, so they're still a little bit back, and they got some teams to jump over. But if they were able to find a way, could
They're
they
a
be a
team that's
team?
hard to believe in. Like, even in previous years, before the Nikolai Ehlers departure, before Logan Stanley, before Luke Shen, they were a hard team to believe in. They're a team that gets there, but a team that doesn't really know how to win when it matters, it feels like. And this is an outsider's perspective. I'm sorry, Conrad, if you're going to be hearing this. I don't mean to offend you. You'll tell me why I'm wrong, I'm sure. But I don't know. They're just a team like the Buffalo Sabres to me. Like they feel really good. They look really good on paper. They can win, but I don't believe that they can win when it matters. And this has been a long-standing thing for Buffalo back to the Dustin Byfuglien era. They just never seem to get everything put together to be successful. They're a good but not great team. And unfortunately unfortunate.
This is a quick one for me for Conrad. It's funny because a couple weeks ago I said when they were on that little win streak, right? I think it was right before the Olympic break or right after. They were on the win streak, and he said, "Not going to happen. Nope, we don't even have to talk about it." And he messaged me over the weekend and said, "I can't believe the Jets right now. Here they come." And all I said back was, "I told you." So
not happening.
I don't think they're going to get there. It's too late. I think if there was maybe 5-6 weeks left in the season, yeah, they could absolutely do it. But with 3.5 left,
it's way too late in the season to be hoping
Yep.
on people to lose.
Yep. And like I said, too many teams in front of them. And I believe I think they're tied with Chicago. I think it's Chicago. Or they're tied with somebody, I think. So not even one of the teams I mentioned. Or maybe it is the Sharks. But
look it up real quick.
There's too much in front of them. There's too much they need to go their way. I mean, but at the same time, saying that happened for the Blues last year. It was February and they went on that win streak.
Yeah, they're tied with the Sharks at 70 points, but the Sharks have 2 games in hand.
Yeah.
And Seattle also at 71 points has a game in hand on the Jets. So not only are you rooting for them to lose, but you're sitting on your thumb while they're playing and you're praying for them to lose. So you're not in the driver's seat anymore as the Winnipeg Jets. If you get in, it's because everybody else sucked so bad that you stumbled in.
It was just a giant collapse in front of you. And the other thing before I move on to the other conference in that playoff race is if I'm Seattle, I'm loving this because I just mentioned it. Nashville's got to play San Jose 3 times, the Kings twice, and the Ducks twice, and like they have the gauntlet. But on top of that, the 2 teams they're fighting with in front of behind the Predators are the Kings and the Sharks, who have to face Nashville too. So if I'm
Is this going to be
Seattle,
rude of me to say that I feel like the Seattle Kraken are one of those teams that just like deserve zero airtime? Like they
yeah,
did so bad of putting their team together. I feel like they don't have anybody on their team that most generic NHL fans would recognize the name of their player. You recognize the jersey. And
mhm,
other than that, they've had zero success as a franchise.
yeah. I mean, realistically, yeah. I mean, what they have one playoff appearance, and was that I believe a first round exit.
Something like
So
that, yeah.
I mean, yeah, and if you notice, like kind of what you said there was, they don't get any airtime. Like you see all these games, all these different teams on NHL Network, but you never see the Kraken as a team.
They're a West
And
Coast team and they have no superstars.
right,
None.
and their version of a superstar is Capo Caco or Chandler Stevenson. But like you said, a generic NHL fan who's watching doesn't hear those names. If you play fantasy, like you know who Chandler Stevenson is, and I want him every year on my fantasy team because he wins faceoffs and he scores. He gets you
Now,
points.
we can call this a conspiracy, but since I'm the behind the scenes person at Inside the Rink, I do have some inside information. Chandler Stevenson is our most viewed player profile out of NHL players all year in
Hmm.
2025. Do you know what that secretly tells me?
People are starting to
Nobody
learn.
in Seattle knows a fucking thing
Mm-hmm.
about these players.
Mm-hmm.
So, one, they're fighting uphill with the Mariners and the Seahawks in that market. They're talking about an NBA team coming back into that market, and they don't have any pure superstars. Like, they're a team who could use to go out and pick up somebody like a Leon Draisaitl if they were on the market, but like that's probably never going to happen. They desperately need a superstar in that market to bring them some noise, bring them some cachet, and bring them a little bit of success. Because right now, being in that middle ground, as I've said before in some written articles on Inside the Rink, is purgatory. And purgatory in the NHL means death to your franchise. It's just not where you want to be. You can't be there.
This was certainly a year that them being in the top 3 of that lottery would have been huge for their franchise. And one thing before we move off of the Western Conference altogether, I'm pretty sure it was Aaron on Twitter. If not, it was somebody else in the New Hampshire area that I follow, but I'm pretty sure it was Aaron. Was at Marshall's the other day, and they had 2 Seattle Kraken jerseys at Marshall's. So it's starting to make this. The logo is making its way this way. The players' names aren't, like you just said. I mean, people are searching who Chandler Stevenson is, and I'm a big fan of Chandler Stevenson, but that's really about it for the Seattle Kraken.
Yeah, but we follow and we cover the NHL.
Right,
Like
right,
you would be an asshole for not knowing who Chandler Stevenson is. But the
yes,
generic NHL fan, they've heard the name Connor Bedard, Macklin Celebrini, Alexander Ovechkin, David Pastrnak, Austin
yep,
Matthews, Connor McDavid, Nathan McKinnon, Anze Kopitar, Drew Doughty, Zach Werenski, Sergei Bobrovsky. Like they've heard those names. None of those players on the Seattle Kraken are household names.
mm-hmm.
Probably not even in 40% of the homes in Seattle, even. And
Prob-
I would stand on that. Like
probably
all of the
very true.
Seattle Kraken fans can post me up and burn me at the stake for saying this. Like that's fine, whatever. But it's not your fault. To be fair, Seattle Kraken fans, I'm speaking to you now. It's not your fault. It's the management's fault because they've bungled this since the beginning and they still haven't figured it out. I'm sorry.
Look at Vegas's expansion draft. They walked right out with Marc Andre Fleury. and Seattle did the exact opposite.
Them
So,
being so successful really screwed it up for Seattle.
mhm, yeah, and I don't disagree with you. Let's shift gears. Let's get the juices going for two teams that we cover and we follow really well in the Eastern Conference playoff race. Islanders right now hold that last spot after the Bruins beat the Red Wings on Saturday in a 4-2 game. And the Islanders moved into that final spot, now holding it by 1 point over the Red Wings. Realistically, I looked at it today, and this was wild to me. And there's 6 teams fighting for 5 spots. Now, 2 of those spots are in a division, so they can't be taken. One of them is in a division as well. So 2 in the Metro, 1 in the Atlantic. Because to me, Buffalo, Carolina, and Tampa are all but locks to make the playoffs this year. And it's just a matter of time before those spots are clinched. But with that being said, the Metro has 3 teams. Pittsburgh, who sits in second right now. Columbus is third, but they're tied with the Islanders, who, like I said, hold that final wild card spot. On the Atlantic side, you have the Bruins and Red Wings both chasing Montreal. And the Red Wings are the team out of the 6 mentioned that is on the outside looking in. I don't want to mention them, but I guess they have to be mentioned. There is 3 bubble teams. I don't see them really making it, but Ottawa is currently 5 points back or 4 points back of the Islanders. And then the Flyers are 5 points back and the Capitals are 6. I don't think any of those 3 really have a chance, especially with it being so clustered.
Time out. I'm going to stop you
Okay.
there. Ottawa is currently playing, as we're recording this, and they're winning 2-0. We're going to just assume, for the purposes of this process here, that they're going to win. And they're going to be a point behind your Detroit Red Wings with the same games played. I do not think that you can count them out as not making it and just writing them off. I think that's you having your Detroit Red Wings hat on a little bit too tight.
Can I switch the background off? Because I'm kind of thinking they're not going to make it this year. But also behind that, Ottawa and Detroit play tomorrow night. So
that's going to be a deciding game now, in my opinion.
And I think you can kind of catch that vibe with the news that came out today. And my big note on Detroit altogether is Dylan Larkin injury kind of crippled them. And March happened. I mean, that team collapses
Is he going to play
in
tomorrow?
March like it's nothing. He practiced today. Game time decision tomorrow. So I think the game time decision kind of depended on, to me, he's going to play now, especially with Ottawa winning tonight. I think he's playing tomorrow.
It's going to be there. It's going to be
back on that top line. Yep. But see, so I want to touch on this because I heard it today and I've heard it a couple places today. But Elliot Friedman over the weekend had a comment to make about Detroit, and he was told by some people that it sounded like that whole team is being held together by duct tape, strings, and glue. And you're kind of seeing it. I mean, they're calling up guys left and right from Grand Rapids. They lost Andrew Kopp and Dylan Larkin. Like, it was, we did the recap after the draft after the trade deadline. And, I was all excited about Justin Falk. They finally got that defenseman. They finally made a move at the deadline to show we're in. But leading up to that, I had talked about this countless times. I know Alex for Inside the Rink also wrote some articles about this as well, that it was kind of, they needed a center. Like, they were looking for that second line center. And they lose Dylan Larkin. Now you've lost your number 1 center. And it was literally the day of the trade deadline, he got injured. So it was like, here you go. You didn't get the center you guys wanted. You got a defenseman, though. But now you lost your captain and your number 1 center. And on top of that, probably one of your top players on your team. And then all of a sudden, Andrew Kopp gets injured. Now you're exposed. Because Andrew Kopp on this team, if they got another piece like a Robert Thomas or even somebody that could just slide into the second line, you put Andrew Kopp at the third. And now you lose Kopp, who is at the time your second line center. Now you're really showing your hole down the middle of your lineup. And I've said this countless times. I know, you move Marco Kasper to the top line. He played some second line, I believe, in the last game. He got slid down. But moving Kasper to the center opens up, bringing up John Leonard, who, when he was up for 9 games, because they didn't want him to play that 10th game, The 9 games he was in was a spark to the lineup. And they called him up. They did not play him when he was called up. That is and that's a all paper. I forget what it is. I'm like drawing a massive blank right now, but they couldn't play 10 games because of something.
An emergency call up basis, or if it was at the beginning of the year, it would be if they play more than 10 games, their entry level contract would kick in and they would not be waivers exempt.
That was it. Was waivers exempt. He couldn't be. He had to be placed on waivers if he got sent back down.
So many different fucking cap rules in the NHL. Yeah. You never know.
And they didn't want to do that, so they had him maxed out at 9 games, and they sent him back down. And that's why he didn't play when he was called up most recently. They had Sheldon Dries and I'm drawing a blank on his name, Dominic Shine in the lineup. And
yeah, because Dominic Shine had the good story of playing so long, and then he finally got his NHL crack and scored a goal. That was a big storyline. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then he's been playing ever since. And instead you could have had somebody like John Leonard, who was at the time of his first call up leading the league, the AHL in goals, and then came up and he was just gelling on the second line like it was nothing. Like he'd been there forever. And here they are trying to piece it together. You're just seeing like they keep sending guys down, calling guys up, sending guys down, calling guys up. It's just they're barely hanging on, and that's why I think they're not going to make it. As painful as that is for me to say, and if that's the case, like if they're gonna call guys up and just slide guys in the lineup, there's a prospect down there who should be called up, and he's also, by the way, a center, and that's Amadeus Lombardi. And I know he was injured, just came back, but you could have used him on Saturday. He came back.
Do you know what I love about this? I produce a lot of the other shows here at Inside the Rink as well. And this is a common trend. Obviously, right now, it's the Bruins Benders and the James Hagens and, their previous issues with Matt Poitras and Fabian Lysell not being called up. It just seems like overall, maybe NHL general managers just hate kids.
Yeah. I don't think. Same thing with Gibson too. They called up Kosa, didn't even play him. Talbot was struggling and didn't even give him a chance. So I kind of agree with you there. Hagens, Lysell's another big one. Like you've heard his name so many times, and there's so many teams. One team that I think is doing pretty well, and I think that's Montreal. And I think they're kind of a scary team come playoff time. I mean, they have the physical play. And they have the goal scorers. Cole Caulfield has had a great season. They're a team. I think they're going to get in. Pittsburgh to me is going to be second. I know the race is kind of tight in that Metro, but I think at the end of the day, I think Ottawa is a team to worry about. I know I said I was going to count them out, but
yep, hypocrite.
I just as I think more about Ottawa and look at what they have.
They have a really good team, and they have a really good goaltender.
Yes. And another one, too, is like Washington. I know they're 6 points out.
Paper tiger. Behind. They got significantly worse, in my opinion.
I don't disagree with that. I do not disagree with that. But I also love, the energy bringing Cole Hudson, watching them celebrate the way he scored that goal. And Philadelphia, to me, not going to make it. I think that's where I should have left it with, count them out. Yeah, they're 5 points back, fine. But there's nothing to the Flyers that makes me says, yes, they're going to be a team to worry about. I think the Islanders do get there. I mean, Schaefer's story, Sorokin, being up there for the Vezina. They have the goalie, like you just said with Ottawa. The Islanders, to me, are a playoff team. It's one of those 6 teams that I said, or maybe even 2 of them, because Ottawa are going to be on the outside looking in, when it's all said and done 3.5 weeks from now. And I know we have talked and you've chimed in when you've been here that the Bruins, you have your hesitations with them making the playoffs. You want them to not. And I
want them to not, but it looks like they're going to do it.
I think they're going to make the playoffs. Now, like we kind of said with the West compared to the East is so wide. The Eastern Conference is so wide open where you get in, you could very well go on a deep run. I looked at it with the Red Wings and Buffalo. Like that could potentially be a first round matchup. And it was, Yeah, I'd rather that than Carolina. Like, I don't want to play Carolina. I don't want to play Tampa. I don't care who you are. If you're whatever team you're a fan of, if they get in, I don't want to see Carolina and I don't want to see Tampa. If I can avoid them, let them somehow find a way to screw it up in their own way before they even get to the conference finals, and then you have to face them. Fine, but
Now, I'll caveat this first, okay? If you're the Boston Bruins and you make it into the playoffs and you face off against the Carolina Hurricanes or if somehow Buffalo Sabres, that's the worst nightmare scenario for both of those teams, in my opinion, because the Boston Bruins have a very good goaltender in Jeremy Swayman, who is looking more and more like the guy in net who can stand on his head and play in the huge games. They've got the pieces on the back end that I think will make you miserable in Nikita Zadorov and Charlie McAvoy. And they certainly have the talent up front and the toughness and the physicality throughout their lineup to dictate the play in the playoffs. Now, the narrative there is piss and vinegar in Boston, and I don't necessarily think that it's directly piss and vinegar. I think that was a terrible way of Cam Neely saying team toughness and team physicality because all of their players are large. They are a very large and heavy team. Even their young guys. Mason Lowry, very big, very strong guy. Not confident in his body and hitting. Very big, very strong. Fraser Minton, young guy, big player. Morgan Geeky, huge guy on the wing. So, like, they've got players on their team that are playing in skilled slots that will be pretty big, pretty physical in the playoffs. We haven't seen Elias Lindholm on their roster in the playoffs yet, and he is traditionally a playoff performer. Same with Nikita Zadorov. So that's my glass half full version of the story for the Boston Bruins and how they could be an absolute weapon in the playoffs. But why I say I don't want them to make it is the Boston Bruins have been a really good team for far too long, and they have spent way too many assets chasing that dragon, and they didn't quite get there. I think Don Sweeney probably was the most honest he's ever been in the last month or so at the trade deadline when he said, hey, we don't regret spending the assets that we spent to chase those Stanley Cups. We regret not winning. And I feel like that's extremely fair. And any fan should be able to accept that from him. And they should also accept and understand that, hey, we need 2 to 3 seasons to trade off some key pieces when we can to get good returns, to get some new draft prospects and, some extra draft capital if the right players become available and really reset that. I think they've made the effort to do so by trading the players away last year that they did, acquiring the Fraser Minton, the James Higgins draft pick, Will Zellers from Colorado, all win there and that. And then they turn around and they get this Toronto pick that is turning out to potentially be a 6 through 10 pick for the Boston Bruins, which would become probably a lottery win for them. Like the Boston Bruins, I mean, that would be like winning the lottery if that pick lands there. Because now you'll be able to get another high impact player high in the draft that I think gives you another step toward, okay, we have enough stars on this team. If we add these prospects, maybe the Florida pick or our pick in 2028, maybe those become trade fodder and you pull those out. But I don't want the Bruins to make the playoffs because they need more turnover. They need more youth. And they're not, in my eyes, they're not a serious contender. Could they go on a run because of a really weak Eastern Conference? 100%. Are they going to give somebody like Colorado, Minnesota, or Dallas a run for their money? I could be surprised, but I think that they would lose probably in 5 games to any one of those 3 teams.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where the Eastern Conference is altogether. And we got
100%.
3.5 weeks left to discuss all of this. And we're going to do it again next week. Connor, thank you for joining me tonight. I hope everybody has a
Absolutely.
great week. And let's do it again. Playoffs are coming. Let's enjoy it.